be a hot topic for tonight. I'm actually a qualified social worker and advocate, and
Good.
I've probably helped out on well over 1,100 cases.
Yep.
And a lot of what people are saying I actually seen echoed right throughout the cases, particularly when it comes to the family court. And I tend to call it court, C-A-U-G-H-T, with a dollar sign, because there seems to be a lot of issues in there as far as the judges checking the information that's put before them. Because I actually had a go at quite a few judges, and some of them have said to me, if we get bad information, then obviously we're going to get a bad decision and a bad outcome. So don't blame us for that. But one of the interesting things is Howard Broad actually did a report dated June 2013 about the child youth and family complaint system. And one of the things he said is that the family court tends to rely too much on the social workers, and that there's a little bit too much predetermination in the outcomes, because the social workers already have an idea of what they want to do and often get it.
Yeah.
And also with the caseload review that was done by Child, Youth and Family, it becomes obvious that what the real issues are, and the real issues, as you have pointed out, is overworking, not enough resources, and by that I don't necessarily mean money. There was an interesting piece of research from a lady called Dr. Dorothy Scott, and what she said is that the further we spread the child protection net, the more chance we've basically got of catching more innocent people in it.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like an overloaded casualty. When you've got a whole pile of people coming through and the same amount of staff, you're going to eventually hit problems, and that's what I hear being echoed quite a bit tonight.
Graham, can I ask you a question? Because I actually read about this in an American magazine, and I wondered whether it was the same here. And what it is that they said once upon a time social workers' job was to aid the parents as much as they can. In other words, do social work, if you like, and aid parents who might be in difficulty or having trouble or what have you. Because we are so concerned, rightly concerned, but we are so concerned now about children being bashed and children being abused and all the rest of it, as we say, the near-glassies and what have you, that there's been the pendulum swung the other way. Social workers are, as you say, their caseloads are too high anyway, so from their perspective, they're erring on the side of caution, and they're removing children now where once perhaps they wouldn't have. Would that be a fair comment?
Oh, I think that's happening far too often, and I think that's a very fair comment. There's not enough support in place. See, the thing is with this, as you said before, no one wins. The social workers are stressed out, the families are stressed out, the foster parents are stressed out, and it certainly does no good for the children, because one of the things that Howard Broad said in his report is the voice of the children is lost. Now, back in, I think it was 2000, Judge Mick Brown actually did a report about this, and he basically said the same thing. So since about 1989, we've actually known what the problem is. It just seems to be that the solution to it isn't forthcoming.
In the magazine article that I was reading, was quite a lengthy magazine article, and they quoted a couple of cases, and one of the things they also suggested was that one of them was the case of an Iranian woman. She's a very educated Iranian woman, and her parents were it sounds, but they were Iranian liberals, extremely liberal parents, if you like. Anyway, she was brought up in America, but anyway, she had left the child alone, and she realised that she was under pressure, and she'd done this terrible thing, which was leave a small child alone for a few hours as she raced into work. But as a result of that, she lost the child. But there was also a suggestion that other cultures or people who are poorer or what have you, this is going to happen to you because we're judging it from a sort of, if you like, a white middle-class perspective. That's how children should be raised. And if you raise your children differently to that, even if it's perfectly fair enough, that's the way your culture does, you're also more likely to lose your child. Is there a sort of an element of, if you like, the majority, the values of the majority being inflicted on the minority?
Oh, I think that's exactly the way that it seems to be going. I'll give you just one example, quick example. There's a case where CYFS uplifted a child because the parents were making them go to church on a Sunday, and they deemed that was psychological abuse because they weren't giving the child a choice. And the child was 14, by the way. Now, when it got before the judge sort of hummed and hawed over a bit, and one of the lawyers put a question to them quite simply. They say, well, Your Honour, the child doesn't want to go to school either. So why? By forcing them to go to school, are we not, by your standards, doing the same thing? We're forcing them to go to school, therefore that's emotional abuse. And it's these kind of cases that really perplex me, because there's one bit of research that's missing which would actually, I think, resolve the whole problem and insist. At what point is it more dangerous to leave a child there or to uplift it? Because there's always consequences to either one. And I would argue from what I've seen, because I've seen quite a few children uplifted in what I consider to be borderline circumstances, is that the greatest damage was done by removing the children in the first place without any consideration of putting supports in to actually help the families. And I think you raise a good point, because most of the cases I deal with are lower socio-economic people. And I'll give you another example. There was a case where there was at a school where the children used to put their lunches out on the mat and they used to have a shared meal together. Well, this Maori kid kept helping himself to other people's lunches. And the teacher didn't get it. It was a teacher from overseas. But within the Maori culture, when you put food out, everybody shares of it. You don't actually just take your own food. And then CYFS were involved because the kid was accused of stealing food. I mean, to me, that's
ignorance,
crazy.
isn't it? Yeah. And so CYFS became involved in that.
Yeah, because they said, well, the child's obviously, this is a learnt behaviour, the child's obviously taking food because it's not being fed very well at home. And, I mean, none of it adds up, and that's a bizarre thing. And it seems to me that, I mean, I've had 3 petitions before Parliament, and one I got an oral hearing, and they said that child youth and family complaint system needed to be reviewed in 2011. My next one, a year later, that got closed because the green and white paper review was going on. And then the one in this year, because CYFS said basically that they apologised, it was the end of the matters. But the thing to me about having gone before Parliament 3 times now is that the politicians also seem to have their own ideas. I mean, Sir Peter Gluckman, the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, he said that a lot of the stuff that we're doing isn't backed up by research. And it just seems ironic to me that for many years we've been running around doing the same old thing, getting the same old results, and Sir Peter Gluckman saying the research isn't there to actually support it's doing any good.
Very good. I thank you for your call, Graham.
Thank you.
Good. Cheers. Hello, Angela.